Hello and welcome to our live broadcast sharing Providence Health's annual report and community health initiatives. I'm Mary Kate Eaton, Executive Director for Education Programs and Chief of Staff for our Community Partnerships Division. As a reminder, the information provided during this event is for informational purposes only. Joining me are Barry Ross, the Regional Director at Providence Orange County and High Desert for Community Health Investment, and Jim Tian, the Regional Director at Providence Los Angeles for Community Health Investment. As an organization, Providence does many things. Today, we're pleased to share our annual report showing the commitment to the health of our communities. To us, this is more than just a report. It brings to life our strategies and initiatives by illustrating outcomes in very human terms. Our community health investment team's work identifies unmet needs and responds with tailored investments designed to help improve health and well-being. This work is central to how we care for our populations. Jim and Barry are here to help share some of the stories specific to the work in the Southern California region. So to start, Jim and Barry, please tell our audience a little about what you do in your roles at Providence, Southern California.
Well, I'll take a start. I think that both of us play a number of roles, but in the LA service area, which is sort of the territory or turf that I am responsible for, I work on behalf of the 6 Los Angeles medical centers. And there are 2 in the South Bay, 1 on the West Side, and 3 in the San Fernando Valley. And, one of the most important things that we do is we lead the community health needs assessment process, which is really an attempt to get information from all kinds of folks throughout our service area and learn from them what their perspective is on the greatest health needs. And we combine that with a lot of secondary data. And so that process is very important to us in terms of figuring out where we go over the next 3 years. And so all of our triennial needs assessments end up identifying the top health needs, and then we develop a set of objectives that cover the 3-year period. So for us, 2019 was our last needs assessment year, and our next one will be coming up in 2022. We partner with a lot of diverse stakeholders, from schools to cities to faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, the city, the county, and we work with them primarily in underserved communities to address those needs. And then finally, I should mention that I provide leadership to the 100 or so caregivers that work for us in the Los Angeles service area and provide programs throughout the region.
And
Thank you, Jim.
I will add the same. I do the same as Jim does, but I oversee community benefit initiatives in Orange County, where we have 3 hospitals, and in San Bernardino County, where we have 1 hospital. So thank you.
So Barry, can you tell me, why does Providence participate in community benefit programs?
Well, as a Catholic health system, Catholic social teaching, as well as the legacy of our religious founders, calls on us to reach out into our communities, find out what the needs are, and work with others to help solve those needs, particularly for the poor and vulnerable. And that is the mission of Providence. And so we really live out that mission every day in our communities in the work that we do. In addition, as a not-for-profit organization, federal and state government requires that we do some community benefit in lieu of paying property and income taxes. But our mission calls us to go way beyond what government requirements are. And I think that is the hallmark of Providence and Catholic healthcare.
Thank you for sharing that insight, Barry. I appreciate it. So maybe next you could share some examples or highlights of some of this work.
So I'd like to speak about 2 programs that we were undertaken in over 2020, and one of them has to do with food insecurity in the high desert. When COVID came, there was one sporadic food distribution program in the high desert, and that program did not meet the needs by any means in the community of Adelanto. So our staff at St. Mary's met with some volunteers and the church, Christ the Good Shepherd Catholic Church, and really had a dream to establish a food hub. The idea was to create initially a drive-through where they invited city leaders and organizations to see how this could work and hopefully get funding to continue the efforts. And so St. Mary's provided some funding and got some other support, and worked with a collaborative that St. Mary's has worked with for a long time called High Desert Second Chance to bring produce. And on the day of the initial event, the group fed over 5,000 people. And that really demonstrated the need. And because of that, the city of Adelanto's mayor, who was at the event, he redirected some CARES Act funding to help so that this could happen every week in that community. So that's just an example of how St. Mary's works with many community partners to bring assets into communities that don't have it and to serve the poor and vulnerable. So that's one example.
Barry, if I
Yeah.
could add just a
Mhm.
corollary kind of
Mhm.
effort in LA, we operate a weekly farmers market at our wellness center, and when the COVID hit, we actually ended up using some of our funds to purchase food from farmers at the farmers market and give fresh fruits and vegetables to families in the Wilmington community. And very successful. We were able to sustain it for over 3 months, and we had, I believe, about 150 families that were benefiting from that on a weekly basis. So very similar kind of analogy. I thought I'd throw that in
And food
kind of show.
insecurity, yeah. Yeah, food insecurity has been one of the major needs during COVID, and we're seeing it continue.
Wow, those are powerful images too, and you were able to help several areas of the community with the purchasing from local farmers and distributing to those in need. So those are great examples. Thank you.
I think that our next program that we want to talk a little bit about is each of us, our response to the COVID crisis. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about like our initial response after the, March, the March 13th date that stands out in everybody's mind. We very quickly started, as Barry and I just mentioned, helping with food, but then transitioned to starting a testing center in one of our local communities. And the most interesting thing about that, and there's some slides that we have to demonstrate this, where there was a very, very much kind of a bell-shaped increase in the amount of people testing positive for COVID. And so where we started out, at about 8 or 10% of people were positive. If we can pull that slide up, I think it illustrates what we're talking about, and it rose to in the target community where we were working. 30% of people who were being tested got a positive test result, and that percentage was about, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it was substantially above the county-wide average, which which really demonstrated um, uh, the importance of placing that testing site in that community. And it's we really we're on the verge now of closing it down at the end of July. But what it truly demonstrated was that um, putting a testing center in that location really made a big difference in that community, which is one of the most underserved communities in Los Angeles. And from there, we moved on to beginning COVID outreach, reaching out with kits, getting some funding both from Pop Health, which is one of our internal divisions, as well as from the County of Los Angeles. And we utilize community health workers to reach out into these communities who had the greatest rates of COVID transmission, to initially provide education about COVID, and we assembled a number of panels of physicians and community health workers that were being excuse me, put out on uh, Facebook, and so that slide there represents the yeah. If you could just stay with that one for a second, that demonstrates the comparison of our testing center to at the high end, the height of 26% positivity in January compared to the county's rate of 21%. And the next slide breaks out the three harbor communities. And you can see again that the community of Wilmington, where we have the testing site, really had a major impact in that community, and the ability to one, get testing, and then subsequently to place COVID vaccine clinics throughout the community have been important to our work and to addressing the needs in those communities that are most under-resourced in the Los Angeles area. So Barry, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to. In addition, in Orange County in the High Desert, we had the opportunity to provide funding for emergency assistance to many organizations to deliver food to people that were homebound. Almost 5,000 meals were delivered. We were able to support Second Harvest Food Bank, bringing in over 50,000 pounds of food into Orange County when there was a concern there might be a shortage of stable goods. We provided hundreds of thousands of dollars in small grants to individuals who needed emergency assistance, such as for rent, for food, for basic needs. And that made a world of difference into their lives. In addition, we also partnered with several organizations in high-risk ethnic communities for community outreach and education. And then most recently, we've just finished our community vaccine clinics that were in high-risk neighborhoods. We were in mobile home parks, in schools, in churches, and we provided over 11,000 vaccines to the community.
I'm hearing big themes, strong themes of community and collaboration for Southern California efforts. And I just want to applaud you and your teams and everyone who has been able to contribute to these efforts. They've made a big impact.
Yeah, I think that we found that going out into the community, there's a group of our folks that that were out in local communities and working both with people individually and with small businesses, really helped get the word out. And when we have been in a number of these communities, Wilmington, Pacoima, Van Nuys, with our wellness centers. And so there's an element of trust that's already established. So getting community partners to help out and being able to help them with equipment and all types of different information. We had a lot of PPE that we were able to pass out. And so in general, I think in some ways it brought us closer together. because we had this kind of shared purpose of it's like a major health issue affecting all of our communities. So we really could not have done it without our partners.
Well, so continuing on the community and collaboration themes, we know that the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange also volunteered to help the sick during the Spanish flu over 100 years ago. We've seen lots of comparisons and parallels to that time. I'm wondering, what similarities can you both draw from the work then and some of the work being done now by Providence and its caregivers?
I'll start. I've heard from our sisters where they talk about hearing from the sisters that were alive at that time, and talked about the fact that they went out into the community. They drove into rural areas up in Eureka, and they didn't have any treatment. They had no vaccines. What they had was their presence and their love, their caring, their faith, and that's what they brought. And they were in education when they were in Eureka, and they were asked to help. They helped, and that got the Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange into healthcare. So when I think about that, some of the similarities I see is that we also went into high need neighborhoods. We were trusted, as Jim said, we were trusted by these communities to help them. And because of that, I think we saw people willing to accept the vaccines and accept the education from us. But we have more resources. We had testing. We had vaccines to offer. And I feel really blessed that we could build on their legacy with the science of today and have a big impact in our communities.
And I would just add to that I think what I think we've best been able to demonstrate, and which all of the sisters from the Sisters of Providence, the Sisters of Little Company of Mary, Sisters of St. Joseph of Orange, they've all demonstrated resiliency throughout their history. And I think the pandemic really pushed that upon us. And so once we kind of like got a step back and took our breaths, then we realized that there were many that were in greater need. And so we began to adjust, and first to just help others out, get people fed, and then move on to the business of like educating people, and then when a vaccine became available, to start to vaccinate those that are the hardest to reach, and that really need some assistance getting access to the things that they need. So I think that in that way, we really are living out the mission that was set for us many years ago.
Thank you. Those are great parallels. So I'm wondering next, what are some of the highlights from the community benefit programs in Southern California? Maybe Jim, you could start.
Sure. One of the things I'd like to just talk about a little bit that we've been doing for quite some time is a program that we call CHIP. And CHIP is about helping people get enrolled in health insurance, either Medi-Cal or Cover California. And it's also about getting people enrolled in CalFresh, which are food stamps, and helping people with both access to food and to fresh fruits and vegetables, and also nutrition education to help people learn how best to prepare their meals, and to help their families with a good diet. So we have been providing this support for people, helping them with the applications for I would say a little over 10 years, and we're annually enrolling about 3,000 people into Medi-Cal or Cover California. And last year, things were down a little bit for CalFresh because of the pandemic and getting people in to see us, but we still were able to enroll almost 1,100 people. And so we look at those efforts to reach out, to meet people where they're at, mostly in the community, but sometimes in the ED, and just help them with the paperwork and helping them get the papers together to show that they're eligible for either subsidized health insurance or help with food and nutrition. So that's a program we're very proud of. It's all done by community health workers, and it's something I anticipate we'll do for quite a long time in the future. I'll
And
pass it off to Barry, and he can talk about a couple others.
I just wanted to share one of our key priorities is around homelessness. And in the annual report for Orange County, you'll see a description of a partnership between Jamboree Housing and St. Joseph Hospital Orange, which created a transitional residential program for homeless people with severe mental health issues. And that gentleman there who's featured, he was living in a homeless shelter, was suicidal, came to St. Joseph Hospital's ER really hopeless. And by entering into that program, it stabilized his situation to the point where he was able to get into permanent supportive housing. And he's now living in his own apartment with his dog Happy in a very stable situation. And that's one of many successes due to that partnership.
That's powerful, Barry. Thank you.
There is one additional program that I would like to talk about, and that's our Community Health Worker Academy. And for a number of years, we have employed community health workers in a variety of programs and settings throughout our service area. And community health workers are basically folks coming from the community who know the community and who carry like an ability to develop relationships with people that are often, hard to reach. And as we continued along this path of developing this role and developing a career ladder, we found that in our needs assessments, many people were talking to us about how they would have to work multiple low-income jobs, and they didn't have enough time for their family. And we know they're really excellent with working with folks in a variety of settings, both educational access and linking people to services. So we found an academic partner, Charles Drew University, and we went together and sought some funds to develop this academy. And so Charles Drew took on the role of developing a standards-based curriculum that turned, we originally envisioned this as a school-based program, but with COVID, we shifted to online instruction. And this is a photo of the first cohort of entrance to the Community Health Worker Academy. They all completed the training, and then the second phase of this program is to put them into 6-month paid internships, either in a hospital or healthcare settings like federally qualified health centers. And so this is really a way for us to work again with our partners, in this case, Cedars-Sinai and Dignity Health in Northridge, as well as 4 other federally qualified health centers. And all of them now have one of these community health workers in working in their facility. And it's turned out to be a great opportunity to both develop a pipeline model, as well as to give people who've never really worked in healthcare an opportunity to get their foot in the door and to become part of a team in a healthcare setting. And so We're just next month starting our second cohort, and we hope that there will be many more to come.
Thanks for sharing about that, Jim. That's exciting news, and I'm glad to see the opportunities are there. So as we're getting ready to wrap up, I want to give Jim and Barry just any final comments or thoughts you'd like to add as part of our annual report for Southern California.
So I would like to encourage everyone to go online and read our annual reports. And if you really want to go deeper, on our websites are our community health needs assessments and our community health improvement plans. And they provide a lot more detail about the needs and what we're trying to do to help meet those needs in our community. I also want to say that I feel real privileged to do this work. That is the work that I know the Sisters of St. Joseph were asked to do 350 plus years ago by their founder, Father Madai. Go out into the community, find out what the needs, and work with people to solve them. And I get to do that every day. So it's quite a privilege. Thank you.
You know, I would just like to add that we very much want to thank both our caregivers and our community partners for the work they do every day. You know, I think it is a calling to be working with those who are on the margins and who need a guide or assistance to get to the next step. And so, as Barry mentioned, it is our privilege to do this work. Thank you.
Thanks to you both. So I'll echo a huge thank you to our community partners and everyone who's made this work possible. It's truly a group effort and true partnership in many ways. So thank you again to Jim and Barry for talking with me today, and to everyone for listening in and sending in your questions. If you're looking to learn more about the community benefits programs in Southern California and our annual report, you can visit providence.org/annual-report, which is along the bottom screen. And also make sure to follow Providence on social media at Providence on Twitter, and under Providence Health System on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.